We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by Grok.com, New Hampshire's conservative website. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for 2 hours of news and opinion you could only get from Grok.com. GrokTALk. Welcome to GrokTALK, brought to you by GrokTALK.com, the place where real Republicans...
Yes,
hang on. Wait a minute. Welcome to GrokTALK.
You ruined that one.
I totally wrecked it.
The place where real
where
real conservatives hang out, who may or may not be Republicans if the party doesn't want them.
Okay, in my defense, the tagline I wrote this morning in my head, which didn't come out my mouth, was GrokTALK, the podcast real Republicans listen to, brought to you by Grok.com, bloggers who write what real Republicans read. And I didn't quite finish it, but I didn't even get it out, so it didn't matter. Hey, welcome to the show.
I was saying that Steve was mouthing the words that he speaks in the intro deal, and had some nice facial expressions. The next time you do this, turn around to the camera.
I looked at the camera a little bit.
A little bit, but you need to do more of it, because then the folks will actually know who's actually saying these words.
Well, you would have heard me on the microphone on the camera, and I said, gee, I've heard this somewhere before.
Well,
and I have.
I want the full value of it.
Welcome to GrokTALK. This week we had Marilyn Garcia on. We started a little early, not a real pre-show, kind of a real show pre-show, and we talked about an event that we're going to go into some detail about in a few minutes, but I wanted to let you know. Candidate for State Senate, Republican Kevin Avard, will be with us in the next segment. A gentleman named Michael Chenoweth will be joining us in the segment after that to talk about our judicial culture.
Such as we have.
And we're going to go back to the MBTA thing that we talked about a few months back with another gentleman. This guy wrote an op-ed in the Union Leader about it, and we're going to go into it again. MBTB, what is it called? We're going to talk about the MBTA.
No, we're not. We're going to talk
about... If you missed the first
new...
segment when we talked about the equipment not being plugged in right, I'd like to add myself to that list. I am not plugged in correctly this morning.
That would be the hospital tax.
That would be
was applied by New Hampshire.
Right. We're going to talk about something else.
Yeah, the MBTA is what runs trains around Massachusetts and keeps wanting us to pay for their expansion.
Right, and that's a bad thing, but that's not what we're going to talk about.
Yes, and for all those people who love public transit, trust me, I rode it for 7 years.
And
it's no great shape.
J.R. Hull's going to join us by phone in the final segment, and J.R.'s been making some waves. We're going to talk about some of that stuff. I believe SB 319 might come up.
Which is?
Which is the buffer zone bill that added a 25-foot buffer zone around women's health clinics, so that you couldn't exercise free speech rights on public land.
Here in New
Hampshire. And because the Supreme Court just overturned the 25-foot buffer zone in Massachusetts, he's saying we need to go back and just repeal this pig and get it out of here.
Yes, which got passed by the rogue Republicans in the New Hampshire State Senate.
Right. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, did you hear that again? Say it again, just in case they missed it.
These same people who, in any rational world, would be Democrats, because they vote more Democrat than Republican. But the problem is the Democrats wouldn't have them either, because they don't vote Democrat enough. Welcome to the Arlen Spectra conundrum.
Let me go back and give Mark Chenoweth his due, General Counsel of the Washington Legal Foundation. He'll be on the program today to talk about MTBE. Okay, and the ExxonMobil verdict, $236 million verdict that was really just a disaster, and we had another gentleman on to talk about it. But he had a op-ed in the New Hampshire Union Leader, and we're going to visit that in the topic, and we're going to spend some time talking about one of the worst judicial cultures in the nation, and that would be yours here in New Hampshire, ladies and gentlemen.
MTBE, something like methyl tetrabutyl ether, a nasty concoction they added to gasoline to replace lead additives, and it didn't go down too well, or more to the point, it went down all too well and got into the groundwater.
Well, I think the point that they're making is that because of the lawsuit, they didn't have the evidence, blah, 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 and it was kind of like Alar on apples. They banned it, but there was really no solid evidence. It was just something somebody wanted to do. So anyway, we'll get to that. We'll have Kevin first. He's going to talk about his campaign against Peggy LePew, and then JR will be on to talk about some other stuff. But until then, it's all ours.
It's
Oh,
free.
good.
It's free for all. And so I was pointing out that.
Well, I actually have to bring up something very important.
go on. Point of order.
Yes, in software, there's two main rules that one follows. And it also applies to hardware, which we found out the hard way. Is it plugged in and is it turned on?
Yes.
I just went to Granite Grok. Guess what's not turned on?
Oh, there's no Ustream feed there. Yeah. Ustream just went live. Yeah. No, it didn't.
No, it has not.
It has not. Lovely. Well, that just fits, doesn't it? Let me go do that. I thought I did that last night. What the frick? God. So those of you not listening to the live stream because it's not up.
Yeah, after I rushed around like a fiend, like a maniac, and got it working, and there I look at Granite Grok. And Steve, I have to say, it's very nice of you to put that podcast live stream
there.
up all the time.
It should be there.
It should be
there. No
should
excuse.
be there
No
now.
excuse.
I much appreciate. In fact, I appreciate all you guys who write, the gals and guys who write for Granite Grok in the defense of liberty and freedom. I am very much humbled by that, but I just wanted to point that out because it fits with the rest of the morning that we've had so far.
See if everybody else has it better.
And of course, the establishment keeps telling us we're being too nasty to those poor, defenseless Democrats with convenience badges of Republican on their names.
Yeah, well, I think that the Supreme Court decision of yesterday really brings out, and I wrote a post, it's a topmost now until Steve puts up the live stream. Being constitutional is everybody's business and concern, not just the judiciary. And I put up two quotes from Democrats. One was a Republican, then went to being a Democrat, something that, she's leading the way, and I don't have a problem. But she says, I don't try to justify anything by the Constitution. It's not my job, and I don't want to do it. And then that was Sandra Keynes, and then Susan Almy, straight Democrat. Well, you don't get to decide what is constitutional, and I don't get to decide what is constitutional, but the judiciary decides what is constitutional. And I think between the two of them, they bring out one of the most major flaws of modern thinking, which is, I'm sorry, but it's everybody's job to think of what is constitutional. We may disagree.
This is yeah. So finish your thought. I get something to add.
But the fact is, hardly anybody outside the judiciary ever thinks of, except for probably us and some of the activists who believe in the Constitution, you should be guided by the Constitution, not only by the letter but by the spirit. When you craft this legislation, you should be saying, oh, by the way, here's our foundational law as we create secondary law. Am I avoiding it? Am I obviating it? Or am I obliterating it when I do this? Just like the rogue Republicans did with SB 319, the buffer zone that tamped down free speech, or with SB 120, which tamped down political speech. The very reason why the First Amendment was written.
And didn't an equivalent of 120 get stomped on for some other state recently?
Actually, in the Constitution state of all places, where they're trying to restrict gun rights, they tried to make free speech more cumbersome there, and they are thinking it to be thrown out. And I find it very strange that it's the Democrat Governors Association that is thinking of doing the lawsuit to make it undone. And I keep going, what a bizarre world we live in.
Right, where Democrats disguised as Republicans work to overturn the rights enshrined in the Constitution, and then other Democrats, realizing that their own rights are being trampled, suddenly stand up and say, maybe that wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it is my job to comment on whether I believe a law is constitutional or not, or whether something that is in the process of being written is constitutional or not. And I told the rogue Republicans, such as Jeb Bradley, Bob Odell, Chuck Morris, and others that have been gracing the front page of Granite Grok for months now, this is not something you should do. This is, I mean, the language in the Constitution is fairly easy to see. It just is... It's plain speech, and yet you do everything you can to confusticate it, to come up with a word.
The federal and state constitutions were written long ago by well-educated but simple folk, and it's designed to be understood by the average 18th century farmer. And it is a sad testament to our education system if the 21st century citizen cannot understand these things. They're very easy to understand if you will but read them. And, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. It is up to all of us to understand whether a law is constitutional and to scream like crazy if it is not. And what it really comes down to, and the same thing occurs in Washington, it is lazy and immoral lawmaking. Let's just do something because it seems like a good idea. Let's not worry about the Constitution because the courts will sort it out. Let's not worry about the details because the voters might not like it. Let's leave those to the administrative agencies to sort out, which basically means they do a third of their job, they leave out the hard stuff, and they completely fail to follow the Constitution. And this is why we're being buried under a morass of regulations, none of which follow the Constitution.
All right. Well, the live stream is up.
Yep.
Sorry, rant off.
I'm going to play this, and then we're going to go over a few things again.
Okay.
This missing portion of your regularly scheduled program is brought to you by Technical Difficulties. Technical Difficulties is the undisputed leader in last-minute, unanticipated audio-related issues. So whether it's a broadcast or a podcast, when you need something to go wrong, Technical Difficulties has you covered. The missing 4.5 minutes from this portion of the program. I did that for a huge segment that we just lost one day and added it in. So welcome to the program. Nothing says, hey, we love our listeners like, hey, you can't listen to us. This is GrokTALK, brought to you by GrokTALK.com, and we are promoting an event today. We're giving away some free passes, some VIP Gold member passes to an event being held by the Marilyn Garcia campaign tonight at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway at 7 p.m. in Loudon. 2 Gold member passes, you get VIP access, you get free food, you get to hang out with everybody who's there, you get to do pace car rides and stuff, and we're going to give that away, but hopefully in the 4th segment, or the 3rd segment, depending, and we'll just let you know when, and you can call us up. So hopefully we didn't just kind of piss everybody off by not having this all working right, but it's been that kind of morning, and welcome here if you're here, and hopefully you'll tune in if you're not here yet.
Yeah, calling in will be a good thing. It'll get your name on the list. Calling in with something pithy to say moves you up that list.
Right. So anyway, the number will be 715-603. Hopefully you're in New Hampshire, because if you can't get there, don't call. Don't call and get 2 VIP member passes to an event you're not going to go to. It's 603-715-9689. And Mike I interrupted Mike's awesome little remarks there, and they were awesome, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we were talking about free speech and, of course, the Constitution, and you were making your point that everybody missed, which was also an awesome point, that it's our job as citizens.
It's everybody's job, and when legislators say that, as one Republican said, well, the Constitution is merely a guideline, and the Democrats are outright saying it's not my job. I'm sorry, it is your job. It's the job of every citizen, whether you're an elected legislator or elected official or not. The Constitution was meant to be everybody's job, whether you actively participated in taking and executing that job. And I think that's the biggest reason why we're in the trouble we're in, because people decided to abandon it, or in a lot of cases within the progressive movement, decided to ignore it and defame it, as they started in the progressive era back in the 1880s and 1890s, resulting in a lot of harm with stuff no longer being considered, and it's just continued right up until now. How great of a president do we have if we look at the Constitution as our quality manual? I come from the manufacturing space for software, and the best manufacturing environments always have a quality manual. This is how we do things. This is how we measure whether we're doing them correctly.
It's not just that. One of the rules in quality is to make your own job as obsolescent as possible. Your job is to come up with a system or a series of arrangements or value-added processes where the quality takes care of itself and you have less to do.
Correct.
If you could apply that rule to government, it would be tiny. But that's not how it works.
Right, and the Constitution attempts to do that. It attempts to be the exoskeleton, the frame, the cage for government. The problem is that the Constitution itself has no force. We, the citizens, are the force. If this Constitution, written by plain folk 250 years ago, give or take, cannot be comprehended and doesn't matter to citizens today, then it's not going to be enforced, and the lawmakers will get away with whatever they want, and they'll offload to executive agencies whatever they can't be bothered to think of for themselves, and we will get the mess we have.
We're going to take 60 seconds to make fun of some rhinos, and we'll be right back.
She tried to make us believe she was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Nancy Stiles has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, she claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. She voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how she drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Stiles' vote. Call Senator Stiles at 603-918-0553 and tell her that we're on to her wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell her to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
GrokTALK.
All right, we are back after our brief amusement, and Skip's going to take a little break. He's got to go fetch something, and Mike and I are going to talk about this thing that Susan wrote that I attributed to Skip, because Susan has her fingers back and she can type now, which is good for everybody. And,
oh yes, we actually are firing. We're very nearly a V8. We've got somewhere between 10 and 12 total bloggers, and I notice everybody's in there. Don Ewing is on a tear. Rick Olson's been putting stuff in. Susan's been putting heaps of stuff in. Scott Morales has been stringing his famously long words together. In some cases, being marginally rude, but disguising it in long words so it's not obvious, about mostly Democrats. When we're all skewering the how was it?
Derailed your train of thought.
No, about mocking the afflicted or something.
I don't know.
No.
Anyway,
afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted.
There
That's
you
it.
go.
We're afflicting the comfortable.
So
don't get too comfortable. We're coming for you.
Susan asked about SB 120, which was the Incumbent Protection Act. That's the bill, another bill proposed by the Republican New Hampshire State Senate that basically makes it a challenge for people to engage in political speech and forces you to leap through hoops to a point where your fear of being sued or being charged with something basically silences you, and that's really what it does. I don't care what its intention was, that's what happens. So anyway, she wants to know. It seems the Democrat Governors Association, of which Maggie Hassan is a member. In fact, she's the vice chair, I think. Let me keep reading.
How appropriate, since she supports casinos.
Well, I don't know.
Vice chair.
Vice chair. Yes. Sitting in the vice chair. Of which New Hampshire Governor Hassan is the vice chair. Hey, there you go. Has sued the state of Connecticut this past April, alleging that its campaign finance restrictions violate free speech. Could this be why New Hampshire's own SB 120, the Incumbent Protection Act, enrolled on June 4th, 2014, has either not literally been signed by Governor Hassan, or Hassan, actually, or was allowed to come into effect 5 days after being presented to her? And then there's a link to the DGA challenge. According to this article in Connecticut Mirror, dated April 23rd, the DGA has been forced into a constitutionally untenable choice. It can avoid the protected speech in which it seeks to engage. It can forego the support and participation of Connecticut citizens in raising the funds that it needs to maintain a robust national program, or it can entertain the very real threats of investigation, fines, and criminal prosecutions the lawsuit states. So, in a nutshell, Maggie Hassan, as a vice chair of the Democrat Governors Association, has signed a bill very similar to the one in Connecticut, which would prevent the organization of which she is a vice chair from engaging in political speech in her state.
Mm-hmm. And so something about Nut Jobs discover that they could be prosecuted for engaging in standard speech.
Right. So they want to engage in political speech, but now maybe they can't. And of course, the question is If they do, will somebody sue them? Can they afford to be sued? Why would they want to spend that money on lawsuits for bills, which their governors support?
Why should anybody or any group of people that want to club together to take out an advertisement, publish a pamphlet, or otherwise get their opinion out more effectively than they could individually, have to hire a team of lawyers just to make sure they don't go to jail, which is what the effect of most campaign finance laws is. It's to keep people out. And it mostly succeeds in keeping the small people out because the big people can afford to hire the lawyers.
It's a big, rich, progressive speech club.
Right.
Because they're the ones who have the money.
The Koch brothers don't go to jail, as the Democrats will happily tell you, but nor does George Soros, Leon Panetta, and all of the people.
Not even that. The groups like Progress Now, that have, the Granite State Progress is here. They have national lawyers and funding. The New Hampshire Citizens Alliance, they have a national charter funded with lawyers. They have tons of money. Buckets of it.
Yep.
They can do whatever they want. In fact, the point is that they will be the ones who are watchdogging people on the right. So if a small business wants to engage in political speech and they trip one of the wires because they're not familiar with all the complex speech laws that have been created just so you can say, I don't like that bill because it'll hurt my business. Yeah. They will get sued, which will be a lesson to everybody else. And all the other business owners will go, crap, I can't afford that. I'm already living on a shoestring. I guess I just won't speak. Actually, they will speak. What they'll do is they'll band together and hire a lobbyist who will then go to Concord or to D.C.
Which is exactly the kind of thing we'd prefer not to happen. First of all, we'd prefer government not to be powerful enough that you need lobbyists and rent-seeking. But secondly, we prefer that anybody can say whatever the hell they want and be sued if it's libel, but not otherwise. And the way these laws are crafted, anybody can be sued for simply stating their opinion, which is plain wrong. What the Democrat Governors Association seem to have discovered, which Democrats usually don't, is that knives have two edges, and that what they can use to cut Republicans can also be turned around and will cut them. And the wording in that lawsuit basically makes our case, which is it will restrict the ability of people to band together and raise money and make a point.
Well, it should be interesting to see how that develops. And that's the first. I think Susan is the first person I've seen talk about it. So we need to amplify that a little bit, poke it out there into the right, and see what happens, because it would be, here comes Skip with some beverages. And
so hypocrisy, Hosanna is thy name.
Yeah, well, I think that you have to ask, why would they pass that? I mean, they just must assume that they won't be subject to it. We were talking about Susan's article on SB 120.
Yes.
And
Not
Skip
yours.
has just proved that when you're in software, you can never have too much caffeine, but you could actually have too much sugar. 2 Mountain Dews, one of them's diet.
I feel better.
You're going to mix them together?
So better, I have my caffeine.
Okay.
I have the mild version, tea. Steve's over there with a big Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
Which, if you are a regular listener to the show, know that it is actually coffee-flavored frosting.
What?
There's a lot of cream and sugar in. A lot of cream and sugar.
Oh.
A lot of cream and sugar. So,
well, I see the XX on the side.
extra cream, extra sugar.
And
there is some coffee in there, too.
And I assumed there was nothing obscene about it, so it had to be the amount of cream and sugar.
No, it's only double X. Which could be Dos Equis or really large, a really large shirt.
Hang on, wait a minute. Are we off on a tangent?
Really large. We're always off on a tangent. That's the beauty of this show.
That's true, and I'm not going to that other tangent.
No, because that's
2/3.
HBO or Showtime late at night.
Yeah, I was just remarking on the number of wordsmiths that we have, and that we seem to be a V8 this week. We're firing on multiple cylinders, lots of people writing, and that Scott Morales is once again wordsmithing his long words and saying rude stuff in polite words.
Yes, I like that.
That's why I asked to bring him on, because
cool.
That was
the
whole point.
flaccid Obama economy.
Right.
Well, we've now had 2 quarters of negative growth, so all we need is one more. We're back in recession. And that's what just...
And it's 2 quarters of actually reported.
Right.
Yes.
And just to make sure we have the analogy here correct is, never mind the slightly disquieting analogy of shriveling some things in Scott's post, But essentially, the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve is pumping money into the economy, and it's like dealing with a ripped balloon. You know, you turn up the speed of the air pump, and it seems to rise off the ground a little bit, and then it starts to sink, and you turn it up a bit more, and eventually the rip is so big that nothing that you do will pump this balloon back up, and that's about where the economy's at right now. It doesn't matter what the Federal Reserve does. It doesn't matter what the Keynesians say. You cannot stimulate this economy anymore. You can crank up the voltage on the defibrillator to the max and yell clear, and and Frankenstein's monster will still lie supine on the floor.
I mean, when people look at this, and unless you're tuned into the economic side of the equation of our daily lives, when you see minus 0.1, which is what we had last quarter, the quarter before that, and minus 2.9, you're thinking, just a downturn of 3%, how bad could that be? In an economy our size, that is humongous. I mean, this is a big, big deal.
It's and like a $16 trillion economy or whatever it is. It's in that neighborhood, and 3%. That's a lot.
3% is going to knock off $500 billion, if I'm not mistaken. It's right in that vicinity. It's a huge amount, and those represent people that aren't working. Nobody not eating because they're still bleeding the rest of us dry to make sure that that's happening.
Which also affects the economy.
Right. But, not that I resent those people eating. I resent the fact that the government has so rigged the system that they can't get jobs and pay for their own food.
No,
and they have.
And you're absolutely right, because over the time that Obama's been president and we came out of recession, we've lost almost $1.5 trillion in additional size of our economy that we ordinarily would have had. And we have somebody,
Kevin.
Come on in. You are in the right place.
Have a seat. We're about to go to break, and we'll be back with Kevin, who's here. And, and liberals don't get this. They're like, oh, no, it's a big... No, it's
well, they all always seem to forget Bastiat's broken window theory, which is, sure, everybody else is getting rich for the money that the baker has to spend to replace the window, but at the very end of it, everybody else may have a little more money.
Put a headset on.
But the baker's...
And you can hear.
Baker is poorer than what he was.
That one, yeah. Turn it around the other way, I think.
Anyways,
No, you had it right. I'm sorry. We're going to break, and I'm telling people how to use equipment. Why am I telling anybody everything? It's been one of those days. But we have a guest, and he's on time, which is the first good thing that we've had happen today. So we'll be back in about 3 minutes with Kevin Abbott to talk about his campaign against Peggy Gilmore and other business related to New Hampshire politics. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers, and of course Kevin has just joined us. This is GrokTALK, and we'll be right back.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Jeb Bradley has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now, Senator Bradley is leading the charge to try and pass a Senate bill to prevent us from criticizing his vote. Call Senator Bradley at 603-569-4208 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. You're listening to GrokTALK.
GrokTALK.